Welcome to Liminal Radio. I'm Hatter.
And I'm Gray. Thank you for joining us on the Station Between Stations, where we dive into the greatest rabbit holes of horror.
And today's episode is something a little bit different. See, Gray, over on the TikTok app, had a kind of niche wherein he would ask hypothetical questions in the hope of getting answers. And today we are going to do horror hypotheticals. Apparently some guy named Hypothetical Harry is involved. I'm still not sure what that means, but anyway, what do you want to do today, Gray?
Hypothetical Harry is going to be my new name, in case you listeners are wondering. That came from a typo. But I'm thinking about just adopting that as my entire internet persona from now on, Hypothetical Harry. And like Hatter said, I am kind of the hypothetical question guy over on TikTok. That kind of became our entire thing. So I thought that it would be really fun to put some horror hypotheticals on Liminal Radio. So we're going to hit you guys with these and let us know if this is something you want more of, because I think this is going to be a ton of fun, because horror is one of my favorite things to ask hypothetical questions about.
It's definitely one of the funnest things to talk about in hypotheticals because it can be scary, it can be funny. It's always exciting, though.
And I think we're going to hit all of those beats. So without any further ado, I want to jump right into it with what I think is one of the most classic hypotheticals that a lot of people have talked about. And I kind of want to give our thoughts on this. So the first hypothetical question is, you are going to be hunted by the villain from any horror movie in the style of their horror movie. Which villain do you pick? So do you have any thoughts on that, Hatter, to start off with before I give mine?
Oh boy. See, the idea of being hunted right off the bat sounds like it might be a little unpleasant, wouldn't you say?
Well, considering that you are going to be in that horror movie, it's pretty much going to be unpleasant, because I can't think of any horror movies that are pleasant to be in. So if you pick a classic slasher, that means you are going to be, like, say, for instance, you were to pick Jason from Friday the 13th, then you are going to be at a summer camp where people start disappearing and you are being hunted by Jason Voorhees. If you pick another classic horror movie, like, say, Freddy, then he is going to be coming after you in your dreams. So you are going to be very much gone after in the style that they go after their victim. So yes, very unpleasant.
All right, I'm pretty sure I already got an answer, but here's my question. Do I know what I know in the real world, or do I know what I would know were I born in that world? And that guy, as far as we know, didn't exist until that point.
We are going to say that you get to bring your knowledge into this situation with you. We're even going to say you are kind of in our world, and then suddenly the horror movie shit starts happening. So you are going to be armed with your complete encyclopedic knowledge of horror movies, at least assuming you have encyclopedic knowledge of horror movies like me and Hatter do.
Okay, so my answer is going to be this, and we talked about this in the dreams episode, that I am a lucid dreamer, and anything that anybody would see in my head were they to enter my dreams is going to be scarier than anything they could do to me. So I think you know where I'm going with this. It's going to be Freddy.
And I think that's such a cool choice.
See, here's the thing. I am constantly writing horror fiction in my head. When I'm sitting there bored, not really doing anything, I'm like, so what if a giant, I don't know, a giant worm were to attack or something like that? I'd be thinking about what I'm going to do. And, when I'm watching horror movies, when I'm reading horror stories, I'm thinking, how could this possibly be scarier? So I feel like Freddy would be in my head for a few minutes and he'd be like, I'm going to cut you up. And I'd be like, well, not if my friend Cthulhu has anything to say about it, or not if my friend, oh god, what name did I give the character originally when I was writing that story? Yeah, Eli Blackthorn has anything to say about it. Eli Blackthorn, yeah, he has control over reality because he was born between realities and doesn't follow the rules of our reality or the reality below it. So he's really going to screw with you, and he is sadistic. And after a while, Freddy would be leaving my head, and he'd be like, "You know what? Game recognized game." We would be friends. We'd become friends in the end. That's what I've decided.
I absolutely love the idea of you sitting down, having a beer, and streaming videos with Freddy. I love that idea.
Yeah, tell me something, Freddie. Have you ever seen the Mandela catalog? No? Oh my god. He's taking notes.
I love that answer. I think that's super cool. My answer is actually, I had to go on a little bit of a journey to decide which one I was going to go with. My first knee jerk, my boring answer is going to be Chucky, just because he's a doll and he's the easiest to, like, literally drop kick him out a window. Even if he does have the element of surprise like he normally does in the movies, I still feel very confident in my ability to take him, but that's not my pick. My next thought went to, well, if we're talking about people that I think I could take, I immediately thought of Scream and the Ghostface Killer, because in every version of Scream, in every one of the sequels, it's always two teenage dudes with no training who, while generally somewhat physically fit, they're not terribly physically imposing, and they're kind of clumsy and they fall all over the place and they get their butts kicked by teenage girls all the time, which, don't get me wrong, Sidney Prescott is a badass, but she is also not like a trained fighter and she's not incredibly physically powerful. So I kind of feel like I could take these numbnuts in a fight, especially because the biggest weapon they generally bring to the fight is a hunting knife. And I kind of feel like I could do better than that if I was locked in my bathroom. So just not that stressed about those guys. So again, I feel like that's a horror movie I could survive. I'm actually picking The Strangers from the movie titled Strangers. And the reason being is because that is a home invasion horror movie, and Sharon and I both love home invasion movies. Every time, especially one of the ones we watched recently was Knock at the Cabin Door, which starts off as a home invasion kind of thing and turns into a whole nother thing, and then has a terrible ending. Don't even get me started on that. We will definitely have to do a movie where we review that at some point because I have a lot to say about it. But one of my big things is I love home invasion flicks because as soon as I'm watching it, Sharon and I are sitting here going, okay, if that happened, we would do this. If this happened at our house, we would do this. Hey, they couldn't do this at our house because we would have this planned already. So we kind of like already live our lives like we are ready for a home invasion flick. And I will just say that because this isn't TikTok, I can use words like gun. Um, that I think that someone who comes into our house armed only with melee weapons is going to have a very bad day because we are more prepared than that. And like I said, you whenever like at one point in Knock the Cabin Door, someone has broken in a window and is trying to reach through it to unlock a door, I'm thinking you have objects around you. Pick up a heavy object and break their arm. And of course, no one ever does because that's supposed to be the terror of a home invasion flick is that if you weren't powerless, it wouldn't be a horror movie. It would just be an action movie. But I am going to be here to turn this horror movie into an action flick. So I am absolutely picking The Strangers. The Strangers.
Two things. One, Shelley Duvall knew what to do in The Shining when he stuck his hand through. She cut him with the knife.
Yep.
Obvious. Two, I noticed something between our two answers. I tended to go for an answer that was, I thought, how could I gain more power? How could I make this cool? How can I turn this to how can I gain from this? Whereas your answer was more, what was one that I could survive?
There is a reason for that difference in answer. That's actually that's weirdly on purpose because I have to watch myself about seeking power because I am 100% the dumbass who would be handed the lament configuration from Hellraiser and go, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, man. I can handle these Cenobites. It's not a problem. I'm sure this will be fine," and start working on solving the puzzle. So I know that about myself. So I try not to do things like that. So I'm just like, I'm going to mind my business. I'm going to shoot my home invaders. You can keep the mystical stuff because I know I'll get myself in trouble.
See, here's the thing with me when it comes to mystical stuff. I tend to only go for things that might be able to give me some degree of power. And if I think it's going to be wrapping me up in chains and taking my skin, I like my skin. I'm a big fan of my skin. I'm probably not going to solve it. But I don't know. If I didn't know what the lament configuration was, and as a matter of fact, if I don't know what it's going to do, I probably wouldn't touch it. So I think that's probably why I'm more in the mindset of how can I gain power from this because I tend to be very cautious with just about everything. I'm a pragmatist.
Interjecting. I maintain that Ray would absolutely say figuration sucks. It would just hand it.
I did not come here to be correctly identified like this.
Sure, you did.
But yes, she's absolutely right. Anything that is at all puzzly related, I end up getting frustrated, wanting to throw it across the room and just handing it to her, who is very good at puzzles. So yeah, no, so I'm totally safe from the limit configuration. But
Actually, Gray,
go ahead.
you may not be safe because it is not hands that call the Cenobites. It is desire. So if you hand it to her to solve, who are they coming for?
Absolutely, it would be me, but Sharon would also be wise enough when I handed her the puzzle to solve to tell me, I'm not solving this, you're dumb, put it away.
So y'all are
Interject.
immune.
Okay, here's my power grab. I'm gonna go into business Cenobite solving the lament configure I'm in. I'm gonna get some kind of kickback, but I don't have to play with us. Say, okay, here's product client. See you next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
I really like the idea that Sharon will like 90% solve the lament configuration and then hand it to people and then somehow get some kind of like payment from the Cenobites for getting the people. I think that that's fantastic. I also think that that's like some kind of weird short story that I want to see is the person who is kind of the professional Judas goat for the horror movie villains. I love it.
I don't know that reference.
Judas Goat is occasionally used in writing or even horror movies or whatever, but it refers to an actual practice that used to be used at slaughterhouses, where the animals, of course, going into a slaughterhouse would get really nervous because it's a very place. They can sometimes smell blood, that kind of stuff like that. And so the slaughterhouses would employ a goat. And the goat lived there. The goat's taken care of. The goat isn't scared because it lives here. It knows this is all fine. He knows he's going to be fine. So you would lead out the goat, the animals, the sheep, the cows, whatever that you're going to slaughter, would be pacified because they know, okay, this goat is cool. He knows everything's fine. So the goat would help calm them down. They would follow the goat into the abattoir where the goat would then be given a treat and they would be all slaughtered. So it was the idea that the goat was being used to calm the animals, but was a quote unquote Judas goat, meaning a betrayer, because of course Judah betrayed Jesus. But it was called a Judas goat because it was calming them down, but also leading them to the slaughter.
Okay, Judas Goat, that's an awesome band name. Don't steal that. I'm taking it.
Well, there's a
Almost
Judas
definitely.
Well, there's a Judas priest. I don't know if there's a Judas goat. Now I'm going to have to Google that later, but that's for another time. So, with if there aren't any other thoughts, I want to jump into our next question.
I'm ready.
All right. You have to make a deal with any devil. Which fictional incarnation of the devil are you going to pick? Now, we're not too concerned about what the deal is going to be. Maybe you have to make a deal in order to heal yourself from a terminal illness. Maybe you're trying to get money, but you're going to have to make some kind of deal with some devil, and he's going to want something from you in return, and what he wants will depend entirely on what devil you choose. So, which incarnation of the devil are you going to make a deal with?
So you remember we had that agreement, and I have to break it for a moment.
I have a feeling I kind of knew where this was going. Go ahead, Hatter. Shock me. Tell me who you're picking.
Lucifer from Has Been Hotel.
I would never have guessed in a million years.
See, the thing is with Lucifer is, first of all, obviously he's a fun guy. He seems like he'd be a lot of fun to hang out with. Jam sessions and music, and I'm sure he'd want to play video games. He's the kind of guy, he's always making ducks and whatnot. He needs something to do. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna play video games with the devil. Well, I guess Judas. I guess Lucifer isn't always not always Satan. The devil is an arguable title, but Lucifer I think fits the archetype. See, because the thing is, Lucifer from Has Been Hotel seems like he'd be fun to hang out with. I'm a musician, so there'd be jam sessions. We could play video games. And the deal that I would go for would, of course, be power when I'm there, because I'm obviously going there. And I feel like we would be friends even after.
I guarantee Price, you have to talk about his wife and
Listen, if it gets me power in the afterlife and gets me somebody to do jam sessions with and music and stuff, I'm totally willing. I listen to people talk about that stuff in the real world because apparently I'm a good listener.
And one thing that I love is they showed that Lucifer absolutely does play the fiddle, which, in case, like, for the four people who are not aware, is a Devil Went Down to Georgia reference. And I'm so happy they put that in.
I would be deeply upset if there was anybody who didn't catch the fact that that was a golden fiddle and understand the reference.
Although, one thing that one of the violin slash fiddle players that I follow on TikTok pointed out recently that I love is that Johnny won that competition fair and square because the Devil's part of that song, while very flashy, is ridiculously easy to play, at least if you can play the fiddle at all. And that Johnny's version not only showed an encyclopedic knowledge of fiddle music, it also is incredibly tricky and difficult to play. So that while a lot of people listen to it and go, man, the Devil's part sounds really cool, it actually shows very little skill and is easy to play, whereas Johnny's part is really hard.
May I also point out, I had a friend way back in the day. The guy was an artist. And one of the things he pointed out was he believes that Johnny lost that competition.
Really?
Because he says that the devil obviously was trying to get his soul, right?
Right.
And to do that, he has to tempt him into doing something devilly. And what he did was tested him on the sin of pride. He said, "Are you the best that's ever been? Are you capable of beating a supernatural being?" And Johnny said, "Yeah, I'm the best that's ever been." The sin of pride and hubris.
Something that, while I agree with you that probably the vast majority of people have heard of The Devil Went Down to Georgia, I'm not sure that as many of them have ever heard that the song literally has a sequel.
Yes, I have. I know that. Devil
Uh,
went back to Georgia.
And actually, the issue of Johnny's pride and the fact that he's going to go back to the woodshed and practice and that he recognizes his previous pride as he has gotten older and matured is actually the theme of The Devil Went Back to Georgia. So I just wanted to throw out that that does exist. And all of that is just to say that, yes, I agree. Lucifer from Has Been Hotel, while I absolutely knew that was going to be your pick, is a fantastic pick for the devil to actually make a deal with.
And of course, we all know I'm a huge fan of Has Been Hotel. And we're going to do a whole Has Been Hotel Hell of a Boss episode in the near future. I'm just making sure that you remember that.
Oh, I absolutely do. I want to make sure everyone else knows that that's coming up because I think that's going to be a ton of fun. So also let us know in the comments if you're on YouTube with us. If you're not on YouTube and catching us on one of the podcast platforms, you might swing by YouTube because it's one of the easiest places to actually communicate with us. But let us know what you're looking forward to about and what you want to make sure we do cover on a Has Been Hotel / Hello Boss episode.
Also, don't forget to give your answers to the hypothetical questions down in the comments.
Absolutely. I want to hear your answers so much because that's one of my favorite parts of doing hypothetical questions is hearing what interesting ways you guys take them. So that's one of my favorite parts. Now, one thing that I really like about us being on a podcast is usually on my TikTok channel, I don't have time because they have to be shorter videos to give my thoughts. So I'm actually really excited that in this podcast, I get to give my answers to all of these questions, which of course, mentioning that, this is my answer to which devil I'm picking. And I am picking Lucifer Morningstar from Lucifer, the TV series that is a spinoff of the Neil Gaiman Sandman series. And anyone who's seen Lucifer knows that he's just very charming. He's very cool. He's very much not an evil Lucifer at all. He just kind of got kicked out of heaven. There was a whole misunderstanding. He has daddy issues with the whole God thing. And one of the key features of why I want to make a deal with him, aside from the fact that he's just a nice guy, is the fact that when he makes deals with people, and he does in the show make deals, it's always for earthly corporeal things. It's like you owe him a favor. He's going to have you do something for him. And he's not like a horrible evil person, so it's usually not something horrible and evil. So I feel like he would just have me like, I don't know, giving someone a ride from the airport or telling a lie to the cops. If it's going to be something like really simple and within my capabilities. So not only is he cool and would I love to get to hang out with him, and I would totally listen to him complain about his daddy issues, and I think we could become friends. It's also just like the least likely to be anything that would be really bad on me. So Lucifer is my pick. I think it's fun that we both picked a Lucifer.
What if both Lucifers met each other? What do you think they'd say about each other?
I think that they would get along, although I do think that Lucifer from Lucifer would eventually get a little bit annoyed and find the Lucifer from Has Been Hotel kind of silly.
Why do you keep singing? Because I want to. I can't sing like him at all, so I just did my own voice, but you see my point.
Although I do feel like Lucifer from Has Been Hotel would be jealous of the other Lucifer's sexy British accent.
You know what? That sounds right in character. Probably like, I could talk like that. I just don't want to.
I could do it. I just don't want to. You don't know me.
That actually sounds like a line from him. Like a line he would say too.
All right. I've got another one coming up. I've got another hypothetical. So this one is body horror if you think about it in a certain way, and would definitely be worse for some people than others. So for our next hypothetical question, this one's going to be a little bit of body horror, at least it would be for some people, and depending on how you think. You are given the option that you can choose to have the ideal body. This is going to be in peak physical health, world-class physical fitness. Basically, this is going to be your ideal body in almost every way, except for one problem, which is that it is going to be of the opposite physical sex that you are currently. So if you are male, it's going to be female and vice versa. And it is going to be a very obvious version of that gender. So of course, if you are a guy, you're going to end up with breasts and the whole thing. I mean, you're going to look like a very, very, very attractive woman, but you're going to be a woman. So, and vice versa, if, whatever. So you do get the peak physical condition, perfect health, longevity, all that kind of stuff. And while you do have to maintain it to a bit, it's going to be really easy. Like you're going to have a very fast metabolism and you're going to put on muscle easy. You're going to have that body everyone wishes they had. It's just going to be of the wrong physical sex. Would you take the deal? It is an offer. You're not having this thrust upon you. You get the choice. So would you take it?
Do you remember the old episode of SpongeBob with the hat?
Yes.
And Mr. Krabs walks up. He says, Patrick says that hat makes you look like a girl. And SpongeBob says, am I a pretty girl? I don't know why. That's just what came to my mind. But I do have a few questions to confirm things. One, would I live a long life? Do I have like an extended lifespan or at least like the top tier for how long I could live?
Yes. Now, of course, you obviously could get hit by a bus or whatever.
Yeah.
But Assuming that nothing happens, you are going to be incredibly long lived. You're going to be like right there at the edge of how old humans can get. So you're going to be in the 100 and something for sure. And you're probably going to be pretty healthy and physically fit when you do eventually die of old.
Yeah, see, oh god, I remember one time way back when I worked at Sears. That's how old I am. This woman came in and she had to show her ID because she wanted to buy something. This woman was 87 years old. I had to believe she was like 45. So that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Oh, exactly. You're going to be 100 and people will go, wow, that 60-year-old looks good for their age.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. And I have my own mind, right? Nothing's changed in my brain.
Nothing has changed in your personality. You're still you. You have all your memories, all your proclivities. You're still you in every way. It's just your physical body that has changed. Actually, I will say a slight modification. You do still have your own mind. However, the hormones of your body will be a little different. So if you are a woman and become a man, you'll suddenly be dealing with elevated testosterone levels, which can have an effect. And of course, if you're a woman, you have the whole menstrual cycle thing. We won't go deeply into that, but just you will have a hormonal difference due to your body. So there could be effects from that, but overall, you're going to be you.
See, that's the one thing that I was about to bring up. That's not something I'm interested in ever dealing with.
I don't think any woman is interested in dealing with that, to be honest.
But at the same time, you're talking peak physical condition. You're talking a long life. I don't have any ideological issues. I'm me no matter what my shell is. So that's not really an issue for me. I'm going to say yes because I'm not going to live to be, well, I'm going to live to be thousands of years old. Just this particular body is not going to be the one I'll inhabit. But yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say yes because peak physical condition sounds fantastic because I don't have that right now.
I don't think any of us do, or at least not very many of us.
Well, even the health nuts you see all over TikTok don't have it because they're telling lies about health, and unless they don't follow their own advice, they don't have peak physical condition. They just got big muscles.
Which is a really interesting thing to point out is that having a six pack does not mean you are in peak physical condition. In fact, these guys with ridiculously low body fats, that's not actually peak physical condition. That's not good for you. It's like all the people who look at, say, Hugh Jackman when he's Wolverine, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard this by now, but I think it's always worth mentioning. They look at him thinking he's, when he takes his shirt off in these movies, that he's in peak physical condition, when in reality, he is malnourished and deeply dehydrated so that he can look like that because you're not supposed to look that ripped and cut up. So that's actually not healthy. That's not ideal.
I have another question.
Yes.
Do people that I know, family members, do they know who I am?
They do, and they are going to weirdly accept it. I don't know if you've ever read the book Metamorphosis, where basically the guy turns into a giant cockroach.
Are you
by
asking if I've read Kafka? Are you
Yes.
asking if I've read Kafka? Of course I have.
Also, sort of a rhetorical question, partially because I know that some of our people, some of our listeners haven't read Kafka. But yes, the metamorphosis where a guy turns into a giant cockroach and like his problem is how am I going to manage to go to work? He just takes for granted that sometimes people turn into giant cockroaches. That's kind of how this is going to work. Everyone who, you introduce yourself to will go, "Yeah, I'm Matt. I used to be a dude, now I'm a woman." They'll go, "Damn, it's weird when that happens, isn't it?" So it'll be weirdly accepted.
Well, here's my other comment on this thing. I was gonna say this whole thing is kind of Kafka-esque, but if you start off female, then it's kind of turn your head in Kafka-esque, isn't it?
And that will be an entirely new experience. Although, if you started off male and become female, your first visit to the gynecologist is going to come as a shock.
I would say so. I should say so. Although, if you've already had a rectal exam for your prostate, it's not the same thing, but same lines.
It's not the same thing, but it's adjacent to it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not the same thing. They're two very different organs, but it's still the idea of somebody probing part of you. So, that's I've never had an exam like that. So, yeah, no, it'd be pretty unpleasant.
Well, in this case, I meant literally adjacent to.
That is correct. It's the front butt.
Which there is an entire joke about front butt that we will get to later.
Indeed. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I would say for peak physical condition and perfect health, yeah, heck yeah, easily. I wouldn't even think that hard about it.
And I'm going to say that for my answer, it is very similar in a lot of ways, but I have some very specific reasons for choosing it, which my answer is 100% yes, all day, every day, twice on Sunday. I will 100% take this deal. The main reason for me is that I have no relationship to my gender whatsoever. I happen to be a dude. I happen to be packing the classic male anatomy. but that is not important to me. That is not a part of who I am. That does not define my identity. That's just not something that I'm fussed about. So if I was to suddenly be packing the opposite anatomy, it wouldn't bother me at all. That's just really not an issue for me. I am one of the gender is a social construct type of people. In fact, one of my favorite jokes always has been a D&D joke, which is that I want to play a warforged named Gender who is a charismatic bard. Pause, pause. You just want to be able to say that gender is a social construct, don't you? And that's my whole thing. I love that joke. Of course, a warforged is a construct like a golem, social, charismatic, the whole nine. Gender as a social construct is one of my favorite comments that I end up making in like a million times in a million places. So for me, gender's just not that important. My physical biology like that is just not that big of a deal to me. So again, if I get to be in peak physical condition, peak physical health, me and my wife even joked, which anyone who isn't familiar with my wife, she is disabled. She has multiple sclerosis. So of course, her answer is also she would take this deal in a heartbeat. And I'd be like, okay, we'll both take the deal. I'll be a woman, you'll be a dude, nothing will really change, and we'll move on with life. So 100% I would take the deal.
How I feel too. Like, who I am socially is, how to put this. I'm me. That's the important part. I'm Matt. Well, I'm Hatter. Whatever. I'm whoever, whatever I'm called in whatever situation I'm in. I don't have much of a strong feeling about it one way or the other. And yeah, no, that's something where, yeah, perfect health. I'll take it.
So for our next question is one that is very near and dear to my heart. That is a subject I love talking about because I'm working in the 5-man band. Don't worry, I'll explain what that means. You get to construct a 5-man band to help you run a survival compound in the zombie apocalypse made up of any fictional human character. Who do you choose? Now, a couple of caveats and discussion points here. And again, I'll get to what a 5-man band is for those people who aren't familiar with it here in just a second. We are going to say that for the purposes of this zombie apocalypse, you do not know what kind of zombies you're going to be. That's being left up in the air. So these could be Night of the Living Dead shamblers. These could be the walkers from The Walking Dead. These could be the fast infected zombies from 28 Days Later. This could be the clickers from The Last of Us. We don't know. It could be literally any zombie. That's not something you're going to have access to the information, so you need to be prepared for anything. Now, the second part of this is what is a 5-man band? 5-man band is a narrative term that is used to describe groups of 5. That is something we often see in different TV shows and books and movies and what have you. Anytime you have roughly 5 people, they will often, but not always, fall into these kind of stereotypes, into these roles that fulfill certain parts of a story. And this is what a 5-man band is. First, you have your leader. That does exactly what it says on the tin. That is the guy who is in charge of the group. That's the leader of the group. The second position is going to be the Lancer. The Lancer is kind of your second in command and is often a rival to the leader. He's the one that kind of questions his authority, keeps him in line, questions it when he makes bad decisions. The Lancer is going to be like, for instance, if we were talking about the Avengers and we look at Captain America as the leader, then we would look at Tony Stark as the Lancer. So to kind of give you that idea.
I thought Iron Man was the leader, though.
Well, that's actually the situation with any good leader and Lancer is usually the leader and the Lancer both think they're the leader.
Fair enough. Continue.
Then we have the big guy and the smart guy, which does not actually have to be big or a guy, but however, the big guy is the one who solves your physical problem, like say someone needs to be beaten up. They're the one that's going to be able to solve that problem. And the smart guy solves mental problems. So if a puzzle needs to be solved or a sciencey thing needs to be done, he's the one that's going to solve those problems for you. So that's kind of who your big guy and your smart guy are. And then your last member of the team is going to be called the heart. The heart is the moral center of your group. It's the one that kind of keeps everyone on the straight and narrow, that determines what the morality of the group is. This is the one who makes sure the leader is making good decisions and all that kind of thing. I will go ahead and throw in that this terminology used to be a little more sexist, and the fact of it being called the heart is a modern thing. Used to be they called it the chick because it was often the only female in the group, and so it wasn't the heart, it was the chick. But that's an outdated term that I really don't use anymore. And I feel like most people don't really use anymore because it's also not accurate, because a lot of 5-man bands have way more than one female character in them. But I just wanted to acknowledge that did exist. So if someone's hearing me say 5-man band and say the heart, and they're like, that's not what it's called, I know that's not what it used to be called, but that's what it's called now.
I like that better anyway.
Well, I think it's a much more useful term, especially in modern storytelling, because you could actually have a five-man band made entirely out of female characters. And we do have stories where that does happen.
It makes sense.
So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into, because I already have my ideas all worked out here, and then Hatter's going to go after me. Per the stipulations of the question, this could be literally any fiction, but I'm going to just sort of to give an idea and for fun, I'm going to restrict myself somewhat to comic book characters. So for my leader, I'm choosing Batman. And I think Batman is going to be really fun. I want to clarify something that I did mention earlier, but I want to be very clear on is you can pick someone who has supernatural powers, but they will not have access to them. So if you were to pick Superman, you get Clark Kent, but he doesn't have any of Superman's powers. Whatever person you pick, they don't have access to their super tech or their superpowers or whatever. They just have the real world equivalent of their powers. So if, for instance, you were to pick Tony Stark, he doesn't have his Iron Man suit, but he is still a super genius and could still build all kinds of crazy stuff out of scrap. That's going to become relevant because I'm going to give you a slight spoiler. He's on my team. So Batman has access to, while of course this is a zombie apocalypse, so his money isn't really relevant. He has access to that same intelligence, the physical abilities, the leadership skills, all that kind of stuff. So Batman is 100% my lead. For my Lancer, I'm picking Himura Kenshin from Rurouni Kenshin, who is of course the main character, who is a Ronin samurai, was originally in the Civil War. He was an assassin. He was called Batosai the Manslayer. And he's a really fantastic, fascinating character. And one of the reasons I'm picking him is he actually shares something in common with Batman, is that he no longer kills. He was, of course, an assassin, killed tons and tons of people, but he no longer kills anyone. One of his signature weapons is a reverse bladed sword, which looks like a standard katana, but the side that would normally be sharp on a katana is dull, and the side that would normally be dull is sharp. And generally, he just uses the dull side and uses his technique. He basically has near supernatural swordsmanship, not supernatural, but absolutely fantastic swordsmanship. And he uses it to basically incapacitate people with the dull edge of his sword. The only reason the reverse edge is sharp is so that every time he uses his sword, he has to consciously make the decision not to kill someone. That he has to every time choose to be merciful, and that's the only way it has meaning to him. So he definitely shares that I will not kill element with Batman, and I think that's a good thing for them to have. We're definitely going to have some people who do not have that in the team to help counteract that, but I really feel like that's going to be someone who is going to kind of help Batman to kind of be a little more mature about his answer, because even Rurouni Kenshin would kill if he had to, because when he was put to the test to save someone's life, he knew that if he had to save someone he cared about, he would sacrifice his own morals to do it, even though he really didn't want to do it. And of course, there's a fantastic scene where the person saves themselves so he won't have to. So Rurouni Kenshin, or Hitori Kenshin, Himori Kenshin, and leave all that in. Yes, I am terrible at pronouncing his name. Kenshin from Rurouni Kenshin is my Lance. So my smart guy is going to be Tony Stark, specifically because I feel that Tony Stark, even stripped of all the supernatural BS, all the super tech, I feel like he's going to be able to take a pile of junk and make all the technology, all the weapons, all the vehicles we're ever going to need. So even taking his intelligence and cramming it down into the boring physical world, the modern world type thing without the super tech, I still think he's going to be incredibly
I have a
awesome.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
So Himura Kenshin,
Yes.
he was in the Civil War, right?
Yes.
Was he Confederate or was he Union?
Oh, not the American Civil War.
That makes more sense. And of course, we all know I'm joking. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, actually, weirdly, the American Civil War occurred kind of in the same time as the Japanese Civil War I'm referring to. And interestingly, there's a movie about that called The Last Samurai, where we have a guy from the American Civil War participating in the war that Rurouni Kenshin participated in. So weirdly, there is a connection.
I like that. It's easy to forget how close a lot of these events were, being that they're, across the ocean. You tend to think, but we're actually kind of trained to think that America is the most advanced country there is. So we tend to think of ourselves as, more ahead of the game. And when we think of other countries, we tend to think they're a little more behind. So I think that's probably why we get so mixed up as to what happened when in other countries.
I have a little bit of a TED talk I always like to give to people that I think that in schools we need to specifically have a class, whether this is in colleges or high schools or whatever, called Meanwhile In. Because I really don't think most people understand, they kind of know what's going on in these different countries, but I don't feel like they know what is contemporary to what. Like, for instance, the last samurai in Japan were happening at the same time as our American Civil War. Also, the American Civil War, and specifically a little after, and the American Wild West was happening the same point as Victorian London. So when you think of cowboys in London, in England, you're actually should be thinking of like Sherlock Holmes. And I don't feel like a lot of people realize that the Victorian England they're picturing is contemporary with the American West. Most people don't realize what was going on in Russia during this period or that period. So I think we could have it would be very useful for people to be told, okay, this was happening in America. Here's what was happening in China at that time. Here's what was happening in Africa at this time. Here's what was happening in Russia at this.
That would be a good class.
And actually does lead to one of my favorite little Tumblr writing prompts, which is the idea that an American cowboy, a disgraced former Japanese samurai, and a elderly French pirate, and a Victorian gentleman thief could all have met and gone on an adventure. That is historically possible.
I enjoy this.
I actually took a shot at writing that one time as a microfiction, but it was terrible. Technically, it still exists and you could read it if you wanted to, but I don't tell anyone where it is because it wasn't very good. But it's such a cool concept. I love that idea.
Well, now I have to find it.
I will say, like all my writing, it's on our website, the Gray Matters blog. Most of the stuff there is very good, but no, I don't take anything down. So even the stuff that was, let's call it early and formative, is still on there if you want to judge me for it.
And I do.
So continuing right along, that's my smart guy, my lancer, my leader. For my big guy, I'm actually picking Frank Castle, the Punisher. Now, this is sort of an interesting choice because the Punisher and Kenshin could almost trade spots. So I feel like depending on which story, which episode, which week of the story we're covering, is kind of going to determine whether one or the other is acting as the big guy and whether one or the other is acting as the Lancer. Because while we have Kenshin, who's going to be kind of helping to enforce that no-kill policy of Batman, I also feel like we'll have Frank Castle questioning the no-kill policy and letting him know, hey, look, sometimes you got to kill people. So he's going to be my 100% choice. He has crazy knowledge of firearms. He's going to be our guy picking off zombies with headshots. I think he's going to be terrific. And for the heart of the group, I am picking Clark Kent, Superman himself. He doesn't have any of his powers, but I'm actually want him both for, one, he's a farm boy. He has lots of relevant skills that will be useful in the zombie apocalypse. Two, he is a reporter and has a lot of just intelligence and tactical thinking, the ability to we could even use him as kind of an infiltration type dude. And mostly his job is to be there to have that big blue Boy Scout energy and keep everyone on the straight and narrow. So he's going to be my heart. So that is my entire team there that is going to help me run my survival compound.
All right. So I guess I'm ready. And the first thing I'm going to say is screw you for stealing my leader. But you know what? I'm not going to make Batman the leader. Because my original thought was, and now I feel like I can't say the same one. I know I could, but it's too easy. My original thought was that Batman was going to be the leader and Alfred, his butler, was going to be the Lancer because he's the only one who can rein Batman in. And we both know this.
Well, and I think Alfred makes a fantastic Lancer to Batman for kind of a similar reason that I think Frank Castle would make a good Lancer, because it's important for people to remember, Alfred does not have a no-kill rule. Alfred was a spy, a British spy, and he absolutely has killed people and absolutely will kill people. He doesn't have a problem with using guns. So I feel like he would be the one occasionally going, look, Bruce, I understand, but somebody's got to do it. You just go have a cup of tea and I'll handle this.
Exactly. And Batman's fear, as we know, does not come from it doesn't come from a moral obligation, though he is against killing morally. We both know his issue is he knows that if he started, he wouldn't stop. It would be the easy way. So, end of the day, if it needs to be done and Alfred's going to do it, if Batman feels that there's another way, he'll stop them. But if he feels it's the only way, he'll say, "All right, Dad, take care of it."
Which I'm totally here for this dynamic.
So, for my leader, instead of Batman, because you stole it, I'm gonna go with Ben from Night of the Living Dead. I don't want to say how he's commonly identified. He was the leader there because I know what a lot of people refer to him as.
Well, and he is such a fantastic character. In my opinion, I think he's part of the reason why zombie movies became the cultural icons that they were. Because if they had picked a less cool, less just intelligent, articulate, mentally and physically, fit person who was just kind of this wonderfully ideal character to be the leader in this situation, I feel like if we didn't have that, that we might not have developed the same type of zombie movies that we did. And I love Ben. I think he's such a fantastic character. Also, it's worth noting that a lot of why that character is so cool is because the actor who played him was so cool, and they just kind of shaped the character around the actor. So, absolutely love that as an answer. The OG leader of the zombie in a zombie movie being your leader. I love it.
And that's the thing. He's a great leader. He knows how to get people going, and even people tend to flock to him even when the Lancer's acting up. And I mean, the Lancer in that was really just more of a foil, but you see what I'm saying. So I'm going to put him as the leader, but I am going to keep my Lancer as Alfred because Alfred, if he could rein Batman in, if Ben were to go off the rails, which is highly unlikely, but if he were, when things get too stressful, Alfred would be there to rein him in. And Alfred has a fantastic strategic mind. So if they're talking about what do we do next, and he's not sure, you can bet your bottom dollar Alfred knows.
And as we stated before, Alfred has a ton of skills from his time as a spy, including firearms knowledge. So that's going to be a really useful pick.
Now, for my smart guy, I'm going to go with Batman slash Bruce Wayne because he's one of the only humans with nearly a 12th level intellect, or however they put it. He's an obvious choice. He's resourceful, he's strategic, he's smart, and I don't feel he would fight much I don't feel like he would fight much to want to be the leader. I think 9 out of 10 times, if he needed to be the leader, it would just happen. Like if he had to temporarily be the leader, it would just happen. But for the most part, Batman is all about getting stuff done, and he would do what he had to do. And once again, with Alfred there, if it did come to a point where Ben was making a bad decision and Alfred couldn't rein him in, I think Alfred would probably pit them against each other and, calm them down. Like Alfred would have a way to keep the whole group in line. He's had to keep the Bat family in line a good few times, like when they were having sort of an internal struggle.
Oh, absolutely. I think that Alfred makes an ideal second in command who's just there kind of playing everyone to keep everyone as a functioning machine. I absolutely.
Now, here's my next question. These all have to be human?
Well, they have to be human or they will be human. Like, technically, I picked Superman and he's not human, but he's kind of human and he'll be functionally human. So that they have to be the type of person that if you stripped away all their supernatural stuff, they would just be a human. So they don't technically have to be biologically a human. But if you pick someone who was, for instance, a talking dog, that probably wouldn't work very well.
So what if we were to choose an alien? Would we get the human version of them?
I feel like in order to qualify, they'd have to be kind of close. It could be an alien, well, because I did technically pick an alien, but they got to be kind of huge. Like, I feel like if you picked Martian Manhunter, that would work, and you would just get John Jones. But if you were to pick, I don't know, Cthulhu, that's not going to work very well because there's not really a human version of him.
What about Erdnot Rex?
Okay. I feel like that's definitely on the edge, but I'm allowing it. Anyone who's not familiar, Erdnot Rex is a Krogan, which are these big hat dinosaur humanoid type people from Mass Effect. They are big and powerful and strong and have a very warrior mindset. If you're not familiar at all with Mass Effect, think a little bit like Klingons from Star Trek. But while they are technically humanoid, they're right on the edge because they're very, big, bulky dinosaur, turtley looking people. But I'm going to allow it. You just get the completely human version of him. He'll just be a big, bulky dude.
And see, here's the thing. The reason I want him is not because of his Krogan healing factor or immortality or, biological immortality or anything like that. It's because if everybody's too busy arguing and something needs to be done and nobody knows how to approach it, he's going to say, screw this, and kick the door down and take care of it. Plus, of course, if it's the human version of Rex, Rex is strong for a Krogan, so it's still going to be a big, strong guy.
And I actually really like that, and I think that's a good choice. I do have to say, if I was going to pick a Krogan I would never even occur to me to pick a Krogan, but if I was going to, mine would be Grandpa Drax from Andromeda, which, don't get me wrong, Erdnot Rex is from a much better game, but I love Drax as the old man Krogan Although if he were a human, he would be still weirdly in pretty good physical condition, although definitely getting older. And he would be the wise, old, cagey dude who wins a fight by experience. So I love the idea of introducing Krogan, but I agree, Erdnot's a fantastic.
And here's the other thing with Rex. If things get really, really bad, like if somebody gets bit, Batman doesn't kill. Alfred, I even think Alfred to an extent, if he might not be able to do it if he really cares about the person that got bit. We know that Ben, he doesn't want to shoot people in the group. He would if he had to, but they'd all be like, okay, so how long do you think they got? And this and that. We should wait until just the time comes. And you hear a gunshot ring out. Rex already took care of it.
I totally agree. Although I actually could see Ben specifically looking over at Rex and telling him, just take care of it. And Rex would do so quite happily. So I love that. And I think that is an excellent addition to your.
And it's not just that Rex it's not that Rex doesn't care about the people in his team. He does, but he knows when something needs to be done, something needs to be done. And yeah, that's why we need a Rex. We need a Rex. As for the heart, that one's a bit challenging. I've been kind of racking my brain trying to think of one. So I'm going to go with the Lord of Lords, Jesus. I'm totally kidding. Yeah, see, it's a rough one. See, we want people with skills. You know what? I'm going to go completely out of left field here because this guy, mainly for his skills, but also because he would be the one that pulls people together. Uncle Fester.
All right. As soon as you said that, I went on a whole ass journey of my first thought is Uncle Fester. That's ridiculous. And then I thought, actually, while definitely not a moral center, he is the type of person that would be wanting everyone to come together as a family because family is incredibly important. After all, he is their uncle. He's somebody's freaking uncle. I love the fact that in the Addams family, it never, usually doesn't state definitively whose uncle he is. In a couple of the movies, they do say, but then in the next movie, they contradict that. So he's someone's uncle. He'll just be everybody's uncle. I think Uncle Fester will be the one that's like doing party tricks, making everyone hang out happy around the campfire and bringing up morale. That is a weirdly good pick.
And Uncle Fester also, yeah, he's basically a big kid in most of the things. So he would be great for enrichment. He would be someone who'd be like, let's play some cards. Let's do something fun. Everyone would be like down on their luck. They're like, oh, we're running low on food. He'd be like, we'll get some more food. Let's play some poker tonight. Or he would, blow himself up and make everybody laugh.
Okay, now weirdly, while I am definitely sticking with mine and I was going comic themed, that actually makes me think now that Gomez Adams would have made a fantastic heart as well.
Really, honestly, either of them, yeah, either one would make a great heart because Gomez, even more so than Fester, is his family's very important to him, and I'm pretty sure he would be of the attitude that the people you survive with are your family. We need to get along. We need to protect the family's honor. The reason I would still go for Fester is because he has a very valuable skill in the ability to invent and build explosives.
Oh, absolutely. They would just both have their own unique skills because, of course, Gomez Adams comes with fencing skills and swordsmanship.
Exactly.
So, no, I never would have thought to go with Adams family, but I love it, and I love having Fester as your heart. I think that is a solid team. I think we both have two really good teams for this. And listeners, please let me know who your teams are in the comments. I always adore getting to hear the really creative stuff people come up with on these. This is one of my favorite things is where you create these teams. I also love the 5-man band. So let me know who you're putting in your team to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Definitely let us know. What do we got on tap? What's next?
All right, next. I have to start by, or rather, I'm going to give you the question, and then I'm going to give a little bit of background and explain what's going on here. And I know that Hatter can also give us a little bit of insight into the background of this question. The question itself is, you are going to become a demonologist like King Solomon, and you are going to be catching demons Pokemon style. What demon from any type of fiction, any type of demonology, any type of group of demons you can pick as your starter Pokemon. This demon will start off beholden to you, and you use them to capture other demons. So I want to start off by saying, when I say like King Solomon is such a fantastic thing, and we of course have the lesser and greater keys of Solomon, and I want to tell the story a little bit of how King Solomon became a demonologist. Do you want to tell it, Hatter, or do you want me?
I'm gonna let you tell it. Actually, I tell it quite so often it becomes just words to me.
All right. The entire thing, of course, King Solomon served the God of Israel, and in doing so, he had power over demons. He used these demons to build temples and anything else he wanted. He essentially used the authority of the God of Israel to command demons. Well, then he became, there's an entire story which I won't go deeply into, but he basically became enthralled by the Queen of Sheba, who was a pagan queen. And he basically chose her over his god and forsook his god in order to be with her. Well, once he had forsaken his god, he no longer had power over these demons. So there's essentially these demons running amok in his kingdom, and he doesn't have the authority of God to command them. So he began to study all the different ways in which you can command demons. So he became a very learned and wise demonologist so that he could control these demons without the power of God. So he thus became this incredibly wise, incredibly powerful demonologist, and then theoretically, at least according to the lore, wrote these books called the Keys of Solomon, which were all about everything he had learned, all the true names of these demons. And of course, this is all the folklore. Whether or not this is true, that's not really what we're here to discuss. That this is the idea that Solomon was a powerful demonologist. And that is sort of the situation you're being placed in, where you have the power. You've got these magic books, these magic seals, these magic keys that allow you to essentially become a Pokemon trainer of demons. And you're going to be able to go out. All the demons that exist in all fictions are going to be real, which I realize will make this a really crazy world, but that's the world you're going to be living in. All these demons are going to be unleashed on our world. And you get to pick one demon from any fiction, any codex, anything you like, that's going to be your starter Pokemon, that's going to be the one you're going to use to try to gather your own team of demons. Which starter Pokemon demon do you choose?
There are so many options. So many options.
And Hatter, I'm going to do you dirty because I'm going to steal an opportunity from you because I already have mine selected. I'm going to play your card and I'm going to pick a has-been hotel character.
I wasn't going to do that this time, but go ahead.
I am picking Alistair specifically because Alistair is such a one, he's just a great character. I love him. He has a great aesthetic. And specifically, not only is he very physically powerful, we see him just absolutely wrecking shop with giant shadow tentacles and things. He's really, really powerful. But at the same time, he's also very good at forming these deals, at getting people under his sway. So I feel like he's going to have multiple ways to help me capture other demons. So I'm picking Alistair, the radio demon from Has-Been Hotel.
If I was going to pick one from Has-Been Hotel, I'd honestly probably not pick him. Because I feel like he'd be trying to undermine me and trick me the whole time, and I wouldn't be able to trust him. I would have to always have my eye on him, and I don't have the energy for that. If I were to pick one from Has-Been Hotel or Hell of a Boss, who would I pick? Part of me, if he wasn't so uncomfortable and gross, would say Andre Alphys, because I like his powers. Fun fact about Andre Alphys, in the actual Ars Goetia, he likes to disguise himself as a human and teach people perfect geometry. So, he's a massive geek, and I hate him, because I hate math. But, if I had to pick, I'm going to go for another one from the Ars Goetia, by the way. My patron demon is Rom.
And tell everyone, I am aware of who he is and why you love him, but I want you to tell the listeners a little bit about that demon and why he's your favorite.
Primarily, first and foremost, and I know it's a little bit of a cheesy way to pick, but primarily I pick Rom because he takes the form of a blackbird. I really like crows, and a crow is kind of, I don't like using the phrase spirit animal, but a crow is kind of my spirit animal. Beyond that, he likes to steal treasure from kings and give them to people who are maybe not kings. Sometimes he just likes to take things for himself, but the idea of stealing from kings is fantastic to me.
I absolutely think that whenever you can steal from royalty, you are morally obligated to do so. So I'm down with that.
Agreed 100%. And just beyond that, he's not too powerful, so I don't feel he'd be too big for his britches. And if he's too powerful, he's just going to destroy any other demon I try to catch. You did say he was going to be basically our starter Pokemon.
Absolutely.
And yeah, if you get one that just stomps through everything, you're not going to capture any others. It's like when you go to capture the legendary and you've overleveled your Pokemon and you accidentally knock it out.
It does occur to me that there may be listeners who are not familiar with Pokemon, but I don't really know how I would explain Pokemon to someone who's not familiar with it. So if you're one of the 5 people who just have no clue what it is, I'm just going to have to say, go on vibes. That's all I can really say. We're going to be using demons to catch other demons because if you have never seen or unfamiliar with even through cultural osmosis, what Pokemon is, I have no idea where to even begin.
And the last thing that Rom is really good at is he can reconcile friends and foes. So, like, if the team starts to fall apart, he'd be the guy that held it together.
I think that's fantastic. Now, we are not going to go into what just gave me an idea for another hypothetical because we've got plenty on the docket for today. But I do want to throw out there in case anyone wants to talk about it in the comments is you could then say, okay, create a five-man band team of demons who are going to be your Pokemon team. So you would have a leader demon, a lancer demon, a big guy, a smart guy, and a heart demon. We're not going to give our answers to that, but if you want to speculate on that in the comments, feel free.
See, when it comes to a heart demon, I feel like a lot of people's obvious choice is going to be Charlie. But I hate to say, I think she'd get on my nerves after a while.
See, I actually think Charlie would be cool. Weirdly, my for my heart, I mean, whether or not you can count Lucifer as a demon, I actually feel like the Lucifer from Has Been Hotel would be a fantastic heart. Whether we count him or not is this isn't even a proper hypothetical we're doing. So you know whether we count him or not is just purely up to us. But I do think he would make a fantastic heart because me and him have a lot in common, including our absolute disdain for authority.
Yeah, and I feel like he'd get distracted a lot, but he's the heart. He doesn't have to not be distracted.
Exactly. All right, for our next question, you are going to be stuck in a creature feature style movie with a giant intelligent animal monster hunting you. Which animal do you choose? Now, a very important thing here is no matter how big the animal normally is, it's going to be bigger than a human and kind of perfectly sized to be big and imposing and dangerous to attack you in the scenario that it is. Now, I specifically say that it's in a creature feature style thing, which means that whatever type of movie a creature like this would need to be in, you are in that situation. So, for instance, if you pick something aquatic, then you're like in Jaws. So, you are forcibly in the water, or maybe even deep blue sea, where you are stuck in an underwater scientific habitat where you can't just say, oh, well, I'm just going to stay in Montana where I don't have to worry about sharks. So you are going to be, for some reason, in this creature's habitat, whatever that may be. And that also this creature will be, while not necessarily completely human intelligent, it will be more than smart enough to figure out how to become a massive problem, regardless of what the intelligence of that creature might be. So, given that, what creature do you pick to be in a creature feature?
Well, I actually thought up a few options, and the first thing is you said you're going to be in its habitat, and I don't want to be in the open ocean because that's one of my deepest fears. So it's going to be nothing aquatic. That sounds terrible. We also did a bit of talking about this, and I thought of some of the scariest animals I can think of. A chimpanzee, for example. It's actually less scary if it's big because the reason a chimpanzee is scary is because they, you know what? We're going to skip all the details because there was an Animal Planet special that scarred me for life, but they're not gonna be able to do that. They're gonna be too big. They're just gonna squish you. It's gonna be faster. Same with a bear. Like, a bear doesn't know the difference between what it's eating, whether it's dead or not. It just eats. So if a bear is bigger, chances are it's gonna kill you right away. It's not as scary. But if we're talking about what I would pick if I wanted to survive and also have it be an interesting creature, giant earthworm.
See, a giant earthworm would be such a cool movie because at that point, you're kind of reenacting the movie Tremors, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
And the great thing about a giant earthworm is you're going to see it coming. It's not taking steps, it's squirming. So it's not going to accidentally step on you. And all you really have to do is survive long enough, not get too far in front of it. You're going to have to lead it away from some cities. So there's going to be a challenge there. But you just have to survive long enough till it dries out in the sun.
Now, being a giant earthworm, it can tunnel through the ground. So, like I said, much like the movie Tremors, you got to deal with the fact that it could be coming up from below,
That's true. So here's the trick you lead it somewhere that's heavily paved so it can't do.
which is one of the tactics they used in Tremors. So, like I said, I know it would be a fantastic movie because it was a fantastic movie.
Funniest thing is, I've never even seen Tremors.
Listeners, if you like Hatter have never watched Tremors, you definitely need to. The first one is fantastic. All the other ones are of varying qualities. They're all at least fun at minimum. It has my absolute favorite character from a horror movie ever, Burt Gummer, because Burt Gummer is the archetypal redneck prepper. And that is so much fun because that is a lot of people that I know that are kind of like Burt Gummer, including I work closely with and a longtime family friend of a guy who I have always maintained is basically just Burt Gummer. And he is portrayed in such a fun way that is making fun of people like that a little bit, but is also like weirdly respectful of them because he's not just a joke. He's actually also kind of a hero of the movie. And it's done in such a cool way. if you haven't seen Tremors, I obviously can't recommend.
I'll have to watch it at some point. I might have watched it at some point in my life and I just don't remember it. But yeah, as far as I know, I have not watched Tremors and I didn't realize that I had just remade it.
You did, and like I said, it was a good movie, so that would be fantastic. The creature is a little different than, of course, just a giant earthworm. It's got a big multi-mouth with like tongue things that come out of it. So it's not quite an earthworm, but it would be the same kind of plot.
I like earthworms. They're nice people.
For me, I'm going to pick something that one I do think would make an interesting creature feature. Not so much a unique creature feature, but would be a cool creature feature, but would also be something I think I stand a fairly high chance of surviving, which is going to be a wolf.
A giant wolf, huh?
Because a giant intelligent wolf coming after you, it can track you, it's hunting you. I'm probably going to be stuck in the woods. Sounds really bad and looks really cool on the posters. I feel it would be an interesting enough movie, but at the same time, out of any giant intelligent creature, I feel like canines are in some ways the less bad version. They literally only have one weapon, which is their big giant mouths.
I thought of this joke while editing, but that's also my greatest weapon.
So as long as I can figure out some way, don't get me wrong, trying to figure out how to kill any giant creature coming after you is going to be difficult. But I feel like if I can figure out how to take any, and they're not heavily armored like a bear, because bears have very thick hides, and actually the hair is also a big part of bear's armor. It's not going to be like a pig where they're almost impossible to kill. It's just a big wolf. So I feel like my chances are the best in the scenario. So I'm going with wolf.
I'm going to tell you what is going to surprise a lot of people because at first, my first thought was giant house cat. But let me tell you something. If a house cat sees something smaller than it, it's going to not only kill it, but it's going to play with it. It's the only creature on this list that becomes more dangerous. Well, not the only one that becomes more dangerous, but as opposed to the ones that would surprise you, it becomes more dangerous because if you're about the size of a mouse compared to a cat, it's going to throw you around, it's going to bat you around, it's going to torture you. Yeah, giant cat would be terrifying.
Yes, I have two cats. One's name is Red, one's name is Lizzie, and both of them are absolute murder machines. They will kill and torture anything smaller than them. My cat Lizzie once took two mice, threw them into the bathtub, and told them, "Welcome to my Thunderdome, bitch," and proceeded to just beat the living crap out of them to death. I only found out about this the day after when I found two dead mice in the bathtub. So absolutely, cat would be the most horrible way to go. I would take almost any other animal before cat.
Yeah, and when they're smaller, they're nice little creatures. I like my cat. His name is Salem, and yeah, I don't know if he would be able to think to throw him in the tub so they wouldn't be able to get away. But the last time he found a mouse, we didn't find a mouse. We found two-thirds of a mouse.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, when cats are small, they're amazing. I currently have one sleeping on my feet right now. That's Red. He's adorable. He's cute. I would not want to be 3 inches tall around him. That would be terrible.
You would be lunch.
Or at least entertainment.
Exactly. So yeah, giant earthworm. I remade Tremors and a giant wolf.
I've got some kind of revenant inspired backwoods kaiju kind of situation going on.
What if the giant wolf and the giant worm fought?
Well, that's the direct to Sci-Fi Channel crossover sequel.
What would it be titled?
Deathworm versus Direwolf.
Okay, when am I getting my money for this idea? Sci-fi? You listening?
In fact, I'd almost be shocked if we were to Google it and find out that this wasn't already a thing they had done on Sci-Fi, just because they've done the most ridiculous stuff on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh yeah, like that Sharktopus thing. Stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Total agree. Sharknado was weirdly good, but that's because it knew it was a parody.
Yeah, it was self-aware, and for some reason Conan O'Brien was in it and was extremely full of himself.
So, kind of keeping this same energy and along these same lines, we're going to move on to the next one, which is you are going to be turned into a body horror version of an animal human crossbreed. Kind of think like The Fly. Kind of the guy became the human fly in this instance. Which animal do you choose to be turned into a horrific version of? Now, the thing to remember is you're not going to be turned into a cute version. If you pick a cat, you're not going to be a cute Neko girl. You're going to be like this, and you're going to slowly morph as your body is pulled out of shape. And so while yes, you will have certain advantages of this animal, it's going to be like in the most horrific way you can imagine doing that type of cross.
So like the cat.
Yes, the movie Cats was all about body horror, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not big on musicals, but I've heard things about the movie Cats, and I do not wish to engage in watching that film.
The CGI is pretty cringe.
Yeah. So here's my question to you. Will we gain the abilities of this animal?
Yes, you will gain at least some of the abilities of this animal, at least insofar as those abilities could be transferred to a human animal crossbreed of the same.
Does that include flight?
I would say most likely that whatever kind of animal you pick, you are going, it will be incredibly unfun to grow your wings, but yeah, you probably end up with wings that you'll manage to fly with.
Now, what about lifespan?
Actually, we're going to say that since this is based off the fly, your lifespan is going to be possibly shorter because you're an unholy abomination, or maybe really long because in that case the horror is that you're going to have to live forever as an unholy abomination. So we're going to leave that. That's not so much dependent on the animal. That's more, we're going to leave that more to the story itself. So that one does not is not affected by the animal.
See, if I have the option of flight, I'm gonna go with, and this is gonna be predictable from what I said earlier, but a crow. If I could get like a 150, 200 year lifespan, I'd go with a tortoise or turtle, plus I'd have armor. But if that's not a guarantee, yeah, I'm gonna go with a crow or some kind of bird in that family.
Which I do think would be really interesting. I also can really see the body horror in that one as like the feathers start pushing their way out of your skin, like especially on your face. That'd be really horrifying.
Really painful too. Feathers are not like hair. Feathers are hard and sharp.
And can you imagine as your teeth fall out as your beak grows in?
Yeah, that's already in the process of happening because I have some teeth issues. But yeah, yeah, no, it would be painful and eating. Oh my god, eating would be much harder too if you got a beak because we're not used to having that. We got fleshy mouths with bony protrusions, not bony mouths with fleshy protrusion.
I'm going to pick something we actually have mentioned, which I am going to pick cat. Fully acknowledging I'm not going to be an adorable cat. I might end up looking like one of those bald sphinx cats, maybe, whatever. I'm no totally understand I'm going to be a body horror version. I just really want to be able to jump flat footed onto a roof and have like claws on my hands and, with a great hearing and sight and all that. So I'm willing to sacrifice being an abomination to get the cool cat like powers.
You'd be Beerus from Dragon Ball Super.
Oh my god, that's exactly what it would look like, and yes, in case anyone's not familiar with that, that is absolutely a body horror version of a Catman.
I'm gonna say this too. I would rather it be an ugly abomination than a cute thing, because everybody's trying to cutify horror creatures. Everyone's drawing these funny little anime pictures of horror slashers and stuff. Stop taking my stuff and trying to make it cute. It's supposed to be scary. Go make your own cute stuff.
One of the things of someone taking something that was originally scary that's kind of been de-scaried and re-scaring it is Nosferatu, the new Nosferatu movie with Skarsgård in it. They definitely took vampires back to scary in this.
I am so glad to hear it, and I'm excited to watch it. Even SpongeBob took the character of Nosferatu and made it kind of silly.
And that weirdly, at least according to some of the things I've heard, is part of what kept Nosferatu enough in the public consciousness to make it something that a movie was remade of. So at least we do owe that to SpongeBob.
It was also a funny scene. I'm not gonna lie.
And also, listeners, one of the things is to let us know if you're interested in us kind of doing some individual movie reviews because we're really considering taking some of our rabbit hole shorter content episodes, which, in case you're unfamiliar, every other week we're releasing rabbit hole episodes, which is a shorter 10 to 30-minute episode where we talk about a much shorter topic than we do on our full length podcast episodes like this one. And that's one of the things we're thinking about doing is taking some of these movies and kind of giving our thoughts on. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let us know.
And you should be interested in it because it's a great idea.
Well, it's our idea, so of course it's great. Those are the only kind we
Exactly.
have.
Well, have I ever told you about the bunk table?
No, I don't think you have, although I feel that this may prove my theory or may disprove my theory that we only have great ideas.
Well, it wouldn't disprove your theory that we only have great ideas when we're sober. The reason I don't drink anymore is because I come up with really bad and not dangerous ideas. I've never done anything that might lead somebody to being hurt or lead myself to being hurt, but I have really ridiculous ideas and a lot more, what's the word? A lot more motivation to execute them. So me and some friends were over at my old apartment. This was maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I don't drink anymore, thankfully, but me and these friends were all eating pizza and playing video games, and we ran out of table space to put our food on because there was like six of us and about a four-person table. And I thought, what would happen if we stacked two tables and the bottom table was for some people and the top table was for other people? I went and got the table and stacked the tables. No one stopped me, and I would be disappointed if they did. And I realized the ultimate issue with the bunk table. You care to hazard a guess as to what that is?
My guess is seeming.
Is what?
My guess is seating, as in where do the people for the top table sit?
You got it. Like we could get a taller chair, but there's still only so much floor space. So unless you can somehow have them float, there's not going to be enough space. Now, the people I was hanging out with, they knew this. They knew that the bunk table wouldn't work, but they wanted to see if I would actually do it. And clearly, some of them had never drunk with me before. But
So so I'm definitely going to say I think that this proves that at least in the presence of alcohol, we can make mistakes.
exactly. So anyway, circling back,
Circling back to our outline, as we are wont to need to do, this is going to be sort of a three-part question. One is you are going to be transformed into a werewolf. You don't get a choice. We're going to turn you into one. Which werewolf do you pick? Now, you are going to be a standard werewolf from this world. So you get to pick a system of magic, a world, a system. Basically, you get to pick a type of werewolf. Can be from literally anything, any movie, TV show, video game, whatever. And you're going to be a standard version of this werewolf. So you're not a special werewolf. You're not half vampire. You're not the progenitor of the race. You're just a standard werewolf of whatever. Which werewolf do you pick?
there's a good few choices. One of the big ones I want to look at would be World of Darkness. Those werewolves have a degree of control and can get more and more powerful as time goes on. That is often the case in a lot of werewolf fiction where you'll get more powerful and gain more control as you go. But in World of Darkness, it seems like I would know exactly what track I was taking to become more powerful, and I'd have more control over it. So I'm gonna go with World of Darkness final answer.
Well, and normally I would pick a different answer if you picked World of Darkness, just because I would want to pick something a little different and give the people some variety in our answers. But in this case, I love World of Darkness so much, I cannot bring myself to do it. So I'm also picking World of Darkness. Anyone who's not familiar with it, World of Darkness is a TTRPG where you get to play vampires and werewolves and what have you. And one of the things is that in Werewolf the Apocalypse, you get to pick various different clans, various types of werewolves. And I am going to go ahead and pick World of Darkness because you get to pick your clan. They have the 5 forms, which I absolutely love, which is you have a human form, a wolf form, then you also have a dire wolf form, a wolfman form that is kind of like Lon Chaney, where you're mostly human but kind of hairy and more strong and powerful. And then you have the middle form, the Kranos form, which is the 9-foot tall killing machine, which is kind of like a gorilla with the head of a wolf and giant claws. So I'm sorry, the World of Darkness werewolves are just too cool for me not to pick World of Darkness werewolves.
Yeah, all that stuff too. Primarily, I want control over where my power is gonna be and how to build myself up. But all of that too, of course.
We have a I want to be a werewolf world. The original Michael J. Fox is then you're basic with a hairy face and a sir packet.
Okay, that is a weirdly really good answer. And also, for some reason, in the world of Teen Wolf, everyone just accepts the fact that he's a werewolf. That's totally acceptable to everyone. And like I said, you just get super strength, super speed, and all that kind of stuff, and you look sort of hairy. So that's a really good answer.
What happens if you shave?
I'm gonna assume that actually you would look way worse because it'd be kind of like when you take a cat or a dog and shave their face. It kind of looks horrifying.
Makes sense.
I'm going to assume you want that facial hair. I'm going to assume it's there for a reason.
To keep you warm.
Besides, I could totally rock the
You could be the bearded lady and the strong woman in the circus both together.
heck. Yeah.
Possibly the ringmaster slash ringmistress too.
You are the circus. You are the whole circus.
I am so down.
All right. We're going to now move on to the second part of this question. Now, rather than being a werewolf, you are going to be transformed into a vampire. And it's exactly the same situation. You are a standard vampire. You are not a special vampire. You are not the progenitor. You are just a vampire in this world. And because we both picked World of Darkness, I am going to go ahead and disqualify World of Darkness, so no Vampire the Masquerade.
Huh. All right, so I actually am going to go for Legacy of Kain. I've mentioned Legacy of Kain on the podcast before. People know I'm a huge fan. And the great thing about being a vampire in Legacy of Kain is much the same as World of Darkness or any RPG game. You have opportunities to get more and more powerful, overcome weaknesses. Kain, when he starts off, is just a guy who can't go out in the sunlight. He can't touch water. He needs to feed on human blood. But by the end of the game, the guy is a full-on demigod. As in, like, he has this strange fifth, sixth dimensional ability to look at multiple timelines and figure out exactly what he needs to do in a timeline to edit it to what he wants it to be. Other vampires have overcome weaknesses. One overcame the ability to touch water. However, he turned into a giant ugly fish man. So there is the risk that the more corrupted you are as a vampire, and they all came from Cain, who was corrupted at birth, and were more and more corrupted. So, for example, Melchiah had his own weakness. This is the first boss you face. He got the least of Cain's power, so when he was resurrected, his body wasn't fully immortal, so he rotted little by little, and he'd have to replace his flesh with, fresh flesh, and eventually he's just a big pile of bodies. But if you're not going off of Cain's gift, you have a lot of opportunities to get some pretty good powers. We've got Vorador, for example, who was the person who crafted the Soul Reaver. We're not going to get into the lore of Legacy of Cain because that's a 6-hour podcast right there. But the point is, it depends on who you come from. And even if I was a descendant of Cain, I'd still have to say Legacy of Cain.
Well, and that's a really good choice because, like any type of mythology that's based in a video game, it's going to tend to be more overpowered just because the way that these sort of things work in video games is in order to work well as a game, there has to be a really high power level. So that's a really good choice. My choice is going to be the Marvel universe. And for people who may not be familiar with, yes, of course, in Marvel, the comic books, X-Men, that kind of thing, there are a lot of vampires. Vampires are actually a really big thing. Dracula even exists. There was even an entire team of superheroes that were all vampires. So this is where Blade comes in, all that kind of stuff. So being a vampire in Marvel gives you a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of kinds of vampires, and most of them, if they are given the time, can become ridiculously powerful. So I feel like that's going to be my really good, like, just general sweet spot of vampirism is going to be the Marvel comics.
Yeah, there's that. I don't think I'd want to be a vampire from Vampire the Masquerade because when you reach a certain level of power, you have to feed off of other vampires and they can easily trick you into becoming their thrall. I don't like that. I don't like that one little bit.
There is also the entire thing of losing your humanity because that's one of the things. And one thing that I do think we should mention in case anyone's not familiar with World of Darkness is all of these creatures have massive downsides because while Hatter and I both chose the werewolves from World of Darkness, those come with their own massive downsides as well because while you can control when you transform, you also have something called rage, which is a stat that's actually tracked in the game, where basically you can enter a frenzy, you can become very angry the more you use your powers. So rage is definitely a thing, and kind of the same thing vampires have. They have to drink blood, but they can also lose their humanity. They have a beast that can control them sometimes. So if you chose a vampire from Vampire the Masquerade, you could also end up accidentally losing control and killing people. That's a legitimate thing that could happen to you. So that's another reason I probably wouldn't pick Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, and there's another thing when it comes to Legacy of Kain is that you're going to start off fairly weak. When you become a vampire, you're going to not be able to go out in the sunlight or you die. Like you'll just catch fire and burn up. You will never be able to touch water unless you want to completely change what you are, which just isn't a good idea at all. Plus, if you gain the ability to enter water, you're gonna, because you have to do it for so long, you're gonna end up being de-immunized to sunlight, which is just over time, vampires just overcome that in that series. So there are downsides, but I think I would just stick to staying away from water. Like Kane is at a point where, yeah, water will kill him if he's submerged, but he can take on his bat form, which is a cloud of bats, and get out if he ever lands in water. So yeah, still my final answer.
And I think I know your answer to the third part of the three-part question, but it's going to be now having locked in what werewolf we would be and having locked in what vampire we would be. Which one would you choose? You're going to have to be a werewolf or a vampire. Which one do you pick?
Vampire, Legacy of Kain. I'd have to stay out of the sun for a while, but I do that anyway.
And I'm going to pick the werewolf from Werewolf the Apocalypse because there's just, yes, there are disadvantages. Yes, I have to deal with rage, but I could make the argument I have to deal with rage now, so it's not that weird for me. And then on top of that, you can learn powers, you can talk to spirits, you get all these cool superpowers. There's just so much advantages. You can actually literally walk into the spirit world. So there's so much fantastic stuff with being this type of werewolf. I'm 100% picking werewolf. So that means that Hatter is going to become a vampire. I'm going to become a werewolf. And this will suddenly become a way more interesting podcast.
I actually get to be a vampire?
Yep, you get to be the vampire. I get to be the werewolf.
Interjecting, and I'm gonna choose vampire, but I'm gonna just for the hate be a Twilight vampire and sparkle my way off eternity.
Ooh. I will say this, however, in Legacy of Kain, not every vampire gains this ability, but what one thing Kain can do, because he gained a spell, is take on a wolf form. So if that's an option for me, I might have just got a 2-in-1.
Well, actually, that would work out great. You can become a vampire that can also turn into a wolf, and when I turn into a wolf, we can hang out as wolves. It'll be great.
Exactly. Would we hang out in London?
Ooh, werewolves of London.
I love that song.
Me too. So, moving on to our next question. This is one of those kind of moral, what would you do kind of questions. You get an evil genie, and you know it's going to be an evil genie, and you get 3 wishes. Here's the catch. You know that your wishes will come true. They will absolutely give you what you are asking for, and they will have horrible consequences, but those horrible consequences will not affect you or anyone you care about. So whenever you wish for, say, I want, $100 million, you will get your $100 million. And then, 3,000 people will die in a horrible train wreck, which through a weird Rube Goldberg machinations resulted in you getting part of the settlement. So whatever happens will have horrible ramifications for someone other than you. Would you still make your 3 wishes, or would you refuse to?
See, I actually looked at this one on the outline and gave it some thought, and it's going to be one of two scenarios. If I know I'm the only one who has a genie, and I know that I'm the only one, I'm most likely going to say no, because no matter what the situation is, depending on how desperate it is, like if somebody really close to me is about to die and I can save them with it, I might make the selfish decision. Basically make the Joel decision from The Last of Us. But if I know other people have genies and they're going to be making wishes, I don't want to be collateral damage. So my first wish is going to be my family and my people and everybody who would be protected under my wishes is protected from other people's wishes. That's wish number one. Wish number two is, the rest of them are kind of obvious, lots of money and perfect health and longevity. Yeah. But if it's just me with the genie and I know I'm going to kill 300 million people by wishing for money, I'm probably not going to do it.
Totally understand. I'm going to kind of go with the hard line moral thing here of I'm not going to take it kind of no matter what, because I am one of those types of people that I try to stick very closely to a moral code, not because I'm a highly moral person, but because I am not. I always like to bring up the fact that I am a Tin Man, which no one who has not read the Wizard of Oz books would really understand. Because the Wizard of Oz books, in case you've never read them, are way weirder, way trippier, and way more like hardcore metal than the movie, of course, is just nothing like it. And one of the things that we have in the actual Wizard of Oz books is the Tin Man talks about how he has no heart, but he talks about it very differently. One of his lines that I love, and I even thought about having a tattoo of at one point, is you people who have hearts are so lucky. You need never do wrong because you have a heart to tell you the difference. I have no heart, so I have to be very, very careful. And that was kind of the character, is he was inherently heartless, so he didn't have any internal compass telling him right from wrong. So he had to intelligently, cognizantly make the decision not to do evil. And that's kind of how I view myself. I make the intentional choice to do the right thing, whether that may be in my nature or not. So, given that I am a Tin Man, I'm going to have to make the Tin Man decision and say, no matter what, I'm telling the genie to go screw. I'm not going to actually.
Thought about a few other things in my answer. I realized it was supposed to be a simple question, but I'm not a simple person.
All right, Hatter, I have another question that's also going to be zombie related. And remember, in our last zombie question, we didn't really talk about what kind of zombies they were, and we're going to kind of fix that now. So, you're going to be facing a zombie apocalypse. You don't get a choice about that, and you're going to kind of be you as you are now in the situation you are now. It's just going to suddenly break out. But you do get to choose between 2 types of zombies. You get to choose between the undead, slow, shambling zombies and the fast rage virus 28-day later zombies. Which one do you choose? And I feel like each one of those has very distinct advantages and disadvantages.
Absolutely. I'm going to say that the fast ones, the advantage is you don't have to go for a headshot every time. Any shot that would kill them, but you would also be shocked as to how many bullets somebody who is on a rage bender can handle and still keep running at you. As for the slow zombies, both I'm guessing spread through bites, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. Both are going to spread through bites and any other bodily fluid transfer.
So disadvantages with the slow zombies would be, first of all, I think there would be more of them because When the zombies stepped in, it would have taken a minute, but eventually the military would have. Who are we kidding? The military and the cops would have started shooting at them right away. So that herd would be thinned out a good bit. Whereas the slow ones would take a lot of people by surprise, I think. And I think a lot of the said cops and military individuals would have probably have been turned.
And something I want to throw in there is the military, to some extent, would be able to, they would be all, of course, military and police would be better able to deal with the rage zombies. I actually feel like the military would be somewhat unable to deal with the undead zombies. And I feel the police would be incredibly unable to deal with the or the undead zombies, because I don't think most people realize how bad of a shot most police officers are. My dad was a police officer, and he was a very good shot for a police officer, and he's only okay. Most cops do not spend that much time on the range, and they're kind of good at putting bullets on target in like 10 to 20 yards at very short ranges, because most of the time, if they're in a shootout, that's as far as they're going to be. So that's all they practice. And most of the time, they don't practice very much anyway. So they're going to have a really hard time making these headshots. So there's going to be a cop shooting like he's been trained into center body mass as a zombie eats his face and he becomes a zombie. So I totally agree. We're actually going to see it being harder to contain the undead zombies than the rage zombies.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. And well, you kind of already covered this, but that's how cops are typically trained with their firearms. They're trained to aim for center mass and don't stop shooting until the threat is eliminated. With rage zombies, that's most of the time going to work. You turn their heart into Swiss cheese, they're not going to keep running. I, on the other hand, as you know, am a very highly trained archer and a very highly trained long armsman. Is that the right word?
I'd say rifleman, but yeah.
Rifleman, that even sounds better. Highly trained rifleman, and I am actually insanely more accurate and quicker with a bolt action rifle because A, that's what I was trained with, and two, with a semi auto, if I miss, I tend to try to overcorrect. That's how you lead to panic. What you have to learn when you have slow zombies and a bolt action rifle is to not panic, to be methodical, think more about your distance and your plan and where you're going to place your shot than getting bullets out there. So for me, if it was slow zombies, I'd survive for a while. Because another thing with the rage zombies is I'm a fat guy. I'm not good at running. Somebody who is like roided out on a rage virus, they're gonna outpace me, 10 to 1. I'm gonna be dead. If these are undead zombies and I have a bolt action rifle and enough ammo with me, let's say there's like 20 of them walking up the street. They're not gonna make it halfway up the street. So I'm going with slow zombies if that wasn't clear.
And those are some fantastic reasons. I have a couple of thoughts. One that leads me in one direction, but ultimately I'm going in a different direction. One idea is that if you pick the rage zombies, these are alive people. That means that, yes, anything that would kill a normal person would kill them. Extreme cold, extreme heat, starvation, lack of water, all that kind of stuff. So they're going to tend to be on more of a timer, which means that zombie apocalypse is only going to last so long, and then they're all going to die out eventually. So, which is, of course, what happens in 28 Days Later. At least that's the implied ending of the movie. So there's that advantage, which means that they would be easier to wait out, but they are going to be much harder to survive in some ways. I'm actually also picking the slow zombies for kind of a similar reason to what you said, which is I have certain training that would be very useful. For one, anybody who's not familiar, I used to have a channel called Will It Zombie, where I tested various different weapons and how you could use them to destroy zombies. And we literally tested them on coconuts and watermelons and things like that. So we were very good. We got really good at telling, okay, what could you do to destroy a zombie skull? So I actually have like literal practical, I also have martial arts training. So I know how to use things like a staff. We actually established a staff as a fantastic weapon for cracking zombie skulls. So I feel like I would do much better trying to take out a undead walker than I would a rage zombie, because rage zombies go very fast. Where as long as your technique is good and your distancing is good, and you make sure to utilize all those martial arts skills that teach you how to manage a crowd and not let yourself get surrounded, I feel like I would have a much better chance at handling the slow zombies. So that's why I would pick those.
Just for the record, real quick, this was all recorded the night of the TikTok ban. We didn't realize it was going to be back in less than 12 hours, so this little section, feel free to disregard. Also, yes, I had her always have a kazoo within arm's reach. I also wanted to bring up the Will It Zombie channel. You know where was that channel based?
That was based on TikTok.
While we were recording this, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like I need to bring this up. The TikTok ban happened while we were recording, and I'm sorry, I know this isn't related, but I got my start on TikTok. I think Gray got his start on TikTok as well, right?
Absolutely. TikTok is the place where we actually got traction, where we actually found a sizable audience. So TikTok is where like 90% of our fans were at, and it's now completely gone.
That's where we met too.
Absolutely.
So I think I have to do just a little tiny send off to TikTok. That's a really bad kazoo interpretation of the Titanic song, and I am ashamed of it, but it's still saying in.
I think that that's appropriate, and I feel like it's exactly what TikTok would have wanted. All right, and one final hypothetical question. We mentioned Ghostface and the killers before, so we know that these are the killers from the movie Scream, and they are, well, can be almost anyone, but they are generally an average civilian. In the original movie, they were just two high school dudes. So relatively physically fit, but not like anything special. They're not overly athletic or anything like that. They're just a random high school dude, and you are going to have to defend yourself against the Ghostface killer. He is going to be armed with a hunting knife that's about 6 inches. So, to give you an idea, you get to choose a weapon that you are going to use to defend yourself from Ghostface. You either get Freddy Krueger's finger blades on the glove, Leatherface's chainsaw, or the meat hook from I Know What You Did Last Summer. It is a long hook with a T-shaped wooden handle that you hold with the hook protruding between your fingers, and it's roughly like in the foot and a half kind of territory that's sharp and pointy at one end. Which one of these admittedly less than ideal weapons do you use to defend yourself against Ghostface with his 6-inch hunting knife?
Well, if you watch the zombie episode, you already know my feelings on chainsaws. They're not reliable, they're not wieldy, they're unwieldy. Can you say not wieldy?
One would imagine if something could be unwieldy, that is just another way to say it is not wieldy. It's a bit like if you are not disgruntled, you must be gruntled.
Okay. Well, anyway, they're not good weapons. Once they run out of gas, they're completely useless because you're not going to smack someone with it. So I would never use a chainsaw as a weapon unless it was like absolute, only thing I could get. You said machete as well, right?
No, no, not machete. Machete is not on this list because that would be the obvious choice. This is Freddy Krueger's finger gloves, the
You're
meat
right.
hook from I Know What You Did Last Summer, or the chainsaw.
Okay, Freddy's finger gloves is too close. It's very close range. It's less than I'd be comfortable with. And if I recall correctly, you were telling me about this meat hook. It's pretty long, right?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely longer than your opponent's knife.
And here's the thing. I'm not fast, but I'm quick. I have very good reflexes and I react quickly. Plus, I have a lot of upper body strength, so I'd be able to wield a big weapon like that fairly, I'm not going to say easily, but I'd be able to wield it effectively. So the thing is, for me, anytime I'm being chased by somebody who wants to kill me, I don't want to let them get close. So I'm thinking the meat hook, and what I'm going to do is, and because something like that can be used in one of two ways, you can use the sharp end or you can bludgeon. So my goal would be to trip them and then either smack them in the face till it's no longer a face or get that hook in them.
And that's absolutely a fantastic option. I really like the idea of using the hook as well, a hook, and hooking their leg using it to trip them. That's a really solid strategy.
Immobilize and then unlifealize.
Now, my choice is going to be the Freddy Krueger finger gloves with the caveat that provided they are well constructed. If they're just literally blades on the end of a glove and all the weight is on your fingers, then yeah, that wouldn't be a good choice. But we're going to assume these are well engineered so that it's actually braced all the way up the finger, so that this is actually reinforced and they have good structure. So assuming these are well made finger gloves, which Freddy used them to kill people, so we're going to assume he did a good job creating them. So assuming these are good finger gloves, I'm picking them for a very specific reason. I trained in a style of martial arts called Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu, and we had a technique called Diamond Thunderbolt, which, without going into too much detail, generally had you having one hand in front of you being used kind of as a shield, and you did certain techniques with this hand presented in front of you. And I feel like if I am in a stance with one hand presented, fingers out, and those fingers have 3 to 4 inch blades on them, that is going to present a very intimidating structure that someone's not going to want to advance on, even if they do have a knife. And if they do have a knife, I now have parrying instruments on every one of my fingers. So I like that idea. Now, I will say that whenever we were throwing around this hypothetical, Sharon had a different idea. which was dependent on does she have some time to prepare? And if she does, she wanted to take the chainsaw apart, take the bar off, which is the thing the chainsaw blade runs on, and take the chain off because now she has the bar as a bludgeoning weapon, which would actually make a very good bludgeoning weapon, and the chain, which is now a flexible weapon. So I have to admit that if we in this scenario had time to dismantle the weapon, now the chainsaw is a lot more useful. I actually think, as Hatter said, chainsaws are way more useful as their parts than as a running weapon. Because one thing he didn't mention, everything he said was 100% accurate. But one thing is that a chainsaw, the way it works, when it starts hitting soft material and going into like a person, there's a really good chance that it's going to bind up, that it's going to get stuck, that it's going to throw the chain off the bar. Because while they're very good at going through wood, they're not good at going through messy things like, a human. So I totally agree that the chainsaw is more use in parts than as a whole.
Yeah, at the end of the day, a chainsaw is not a good weapon, despite what people seem to think. And yeah, my answer is going to be the thing that lets me zone. Like, are you familiar with the term zoning?
Yeah, I assume you mean like zone of defense.
Yeah, typically where I heard it was fighting games. It's like, finding ways to keep your distance effectively, and that would be my goal, would be to fight at a distance that is more effective for me versus him. So, I'm there, I'm using that hook to keep him away from me, but I'm also going to use it to bludgeon his face in for trying to kill me.
Absolutely. And as Zombieland taught us, always double tap.
Precisely. Now, you mentioned this was your last one, but now I'm going to turn the tables and give you one of mine.
Excellent. Lay it on me.
So here's what I'm going to ask you, Gray. You have the option to get second sight. You will see horrible creatures, things that exist anyway. They're always there, but now you can see them. And you're going to see them no matter what. You're going to see them at night. You're going to see them during the day. You can hear them as well. So these things that are always there, and they are a threat to people. They're a threat to people, though they extremely rarely attack. When you hear of a mysterious sudden death that nobody can figure out how it happened, they probably did it. Your spontaneous combustions, all of that. Now, here is a major advantage. If you can see them, they can't hurt you. They can torment you. They could try to freak you out. They could try to scare you. They could try to drive you insane and try and get you to take yourself off the equation, but they cannot directly attack you. But again, bearing in mind, they can try to drive you insane. In the middle of the night, you might wake up and open your eyes and see the most horrific face you've ever seen staring at you. If you're not wearing headphones, it might even. Do you take this ability?
I do want to say that sound was startling even in this context. So I do totally take your point.
That's just my black metal voice.
So I am going to say that for me, my answer is I 100% take this because I would always rather know. I am not one of the people who believes that ignorance is bliss. I always want to be aware of what's going on. And in this case, not only am I aware of my surroundings and hopefully can use my awareness of these creatures to protect other people from them, I also, just by being aware of them, am protected from them. So, bring it on. They can be as scary as they want. I don't have a problem. In fact, they should probably be careful because if they cause themselves to be too much of a problem for me, I'm going to start seeking solutions. Because in general, if something can touch you, you can probably touch it. Now, I probably can't touch them because they can't touch me, but someone else could. And now I'm picturing myself reenacting the movie C for Me, where I am directing someone to snipe monsters. So, like I said, 100%, I would always rather know. I am going with the ability to see them all.
I can see how that would go. You'd be in the kitchen preparing dinner and you'd be like, Sharon, do a quick 180 and just kind of jab the knife out as far and hard as you can.
Which she would do without question, even if I just asked her to do that right now. My wife wouldn't even think that was.
And I see how that goes too. It's like, why did I do that? And that's how you know
She's-
you have a good marriage.
She's standing there. Why did I do that? As a monster is writhing around dead on the ground. I just had to take care of something. Hey, can you just sort of shuffle your feet towards the back door as she's like unknowingly just kicking it out the back door to where we keep the garbage?
Not the ever asked me.
Fair enough.
So what would your answer be, Hatter?
My answer is pretty much the same. If I know it's there and it can't hurt me, but here's the thing. I seek stuff like that out every day. I go on YouTube and Google. I should say here, we're on YouTube. And search for the scariest things I can find, wanting something to scratch that itch that has remained for so long, because I've watched nothing but horror content for the past 15 years of my life, 25 years of my life, sorry, and nothing scares me anymore. So, in other words, this would be a blessing for me. I'd see it and be like, oh, neat. And I feel like it would be like the whole Freddy thing where we would end up becoming friends.
I like it. I think that this is a solid way to go.
I think it would just be at the end of the day, like, oh, you're awesome. And the monster would be like, really? But yeah, at night, if I wanted to sleep, remember what I said, they can't touch you. Okay, so I'm going to add another caveat, but first I'm going to say, considering the idea that they cannot touch you, you put on a blindfold and a pair of headphones and you sleep fine. But what if, not if your eyes are closed, but if you purposely create ways to blind and deafen yourself to them, they can hurt you again. And they'll be angry.
Now, that's an interesting one because that brings up a lot of questions. Does it have to be purposeful? Is it any time that I can't see them, they can hurt me? That adds a whole lot more of a lot more subtlety to the question. So I'm not sure. It would depend on all the fine details of whether or not I would take that. As long as I could still work it to my advantage where I could still make myself safe from them, sure. But it very quickly in that case could turn out where I lose all my advantages just by the fact that, oh, hey, if they happen to be behind a door, they can now, they could now throw something at me from behind the door or whatever. So as long as it still functionally works the same, I would take it. But if it makes me too vulnerable, then no.
It functionally works the same. If you're going to sleep, like obviously you have to close your eyes to sleep. They can yell. They can, wait for you to open your eyes. They still can't hurt you because you're doing what you have to do as a human being. If you close the door and they happen to be behind it, as long as you're not closing the door to keep them out on purpose. So in other words, if it's behind the door and you close the door to try and keep them out, that's hiding from them. If you're trying to hide from them, they can start trying to hurt you again. But if you close the door by accident, let's say supernaturally somehow they know that it was an accident, or if you're just going to sleep or you happen to turn around because you want to grab something and you can't see them, that does not disqualify the contract. The contract is only disqualified if you purposely try to hide from them in some way. Try to hide them from your vision or your hearing, or try to hide from them.
I would still probably take that, although if they're being dicks about it like that, I am intentionally going to make it weird. I am going to make uncomfortable eye contact while I shave my junk.
Yeah, oh yeah, there are other things you could do to make them uncomfortable too.
I actually figured that was the most YouTube appropriate. I thought of some weirder things I could say. That's what I'm going with for my YouTube appropriate answer.
You just smile at them and say, "Am I pretty?" You see, at the end of the day, though, well, yeah, when it comes to YouTube appropriate, first of all, we don't have to be as bad as TikTok, but we do have to try to limit the F bombs to maybe twice an episode, and anything that is kind of triggery, we probably should address and avoid certain things. But yeah, I'm going to tell you the same thing. I would still take it because I would rather be, slightly lacking in sleep and a little nervous from what I might see than I'd rather than be dead. Here's the thing though, at the end of the day, like I said, it's highly unlikely you'll ever get touched by one of them if you don't take this ability. This just eliminates the possibility. So I want to know, this is one that I want to know. People in the comments, let's say there's like a 1 in 10,000 chance you will be killed by one of these creatures if you can't see them. But if you take the ability, it's a 0 chance. What do you guys do given all of these caveats?
Absolutely. Let us know in the comments. Also, let us know your answers, any or all of these. This is one of my favorite things about doing this episode. This was, of course, actually my suggestion because I'm kind of the hypothetical question guy. And one of the things I was most looking forward to is getting to hear all of your answers. So please, in the comments, let us know the answer to this one and all the others.
All right, so I think we're coming up to the end of our list of questions. I just want to thank everybody for listening. And more importantly, stay tuned for next week's episode because we don't know what it's going to be yet.
That's true. Normally, whenever we end these, we have an idea for what we're going to do next. This one's actually still up in the air, so we're actually very excited. As soon as we log off here, we're going to discuss what it's going to be. And so this will be a surprise not only to you, but also to us. So stay tuned and find out what we talk about next.
Chaos and wild magic! I love chaos. But do you have anything else to add, Gray?
Not a thing. I just want to thank everyone for participating in what I hope is going to be a very fun comments.
And we do have some more hypothetical questions. We're going to drop maybe as short episodes or as shorts. Until then, thank you for joining us on Liminal Radio. I'm Hatter.
And I'm Gray. And this has been the Station Between Stations.